So my name is Ravi Mangla. I'm a political educator with Citizen Action. And also, Sam, want to introduce yourself?
Right, yeah. So hi, I'm Sam. I'm a political educator also, working with Ravi. Thank you everyone for being here tonight.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have so many people on and to be kicking off our leadership summit tonight. So to give us a big warm welcome and really start things off, I'm going to pass it off to Yvette Alfonso, who's the president of our statewide board.
Hola, buenas tardes. Hello, good afternoon. I guess it's evening to everybody. Welcome to our biannual leadership summit. This event happens every 2 years for us to, one, get a chance to connect, as progressives, get a chance to really lay out great discussions about policies and where we go from here, and also to elect at our large board members. And that will happen on Saturday. We will be electing 5 new at-large members and state board members, and I hope everybody will get on for that. The reason we do this, and unfortunately we can't do it in person, but I've been doing this Zoom enough that I'm beginning to feel really, really connected, is that the moment right now and the moment, actually every year that we do get to discuss these matters and particularly this, particularly this year, the moment is one that is, we're at a crucial point. We're at a point where things can go many, many different ways. And we as progressives, as a part of an organization, Citizen Action, really want to make sure we're ahead of the conversation, that we don't get driven by it, but that we drive it. So today, our topic is how we move, build, and win, which is a very good way to start it off. Tomorrow, we're doing cooking with progressives, and there'll be more talk about that. And then Thursday, it's kind of a wrap up of the workshops. We're having some really good speakers coming on. Oh, that's my daughter and granddaughter going by. And of course, finish up with the actual meeting together on Saturday. I'm glad everybody's on. If you know other people who want to get on, I'm sure they can still register for the next few days, so that we can add people to it. Now, I should say that my pronouns are she, her, and they. I happen to be in Albany, and I would say my energy check-in is really high, comfortable in terms of I'm with my people. I'm with everybody that I think can really pull together and make positive change. So I'd like you to, again, in the chat function, if you could, next to your name, put down your pronouns and let us know how you're feeling. Is your energy high, medium, low, comfortable, or uncomfortable? And I'm going to stop there because we really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the discussion. And I know I'm going to see some of you in one of the chat rooms, and I'll see you again at the end. Thank you.
I think we're going to pass it off to Fred to do the ground rules.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? I mean, I guess whoever's on or in the chat, I guess. Well, I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Fred Floss. I've been a volunteer board member with Citizen Action for a while. My pronouns are he, him, his. Currently in Albany, in my room. You can see one corner of a cool poster in the side of the screen. And to get started, I'm just going to go over some basic ground rules for the discussion to follow. So the first rule that I want to go over is one mic. So one mic, what we mean by that is one person speaks at a time. We try to limit side conversations. And when a person is speaking, that everyone gives them the attention they're due. Next, everyone participates, no one dominates. Relatively self-explanatory. This is a space where all voices have value. We want to be sure that everyone has a chance to be heard and share their thoughts, ideas, comments, and suggestions. Everyone is valued equally. Land the plane. This is a fun one. So as we want to be sure to respect the time of each other and our time together, when speaking, it would be appreciated to get to the specific point brought up when talking and allow time for others to speak and respond and process said point. Don't circle the runway, land the plane. Stories stay, lessons leave. So regardless of the meeting or workshop, we tackle very personal issues, and often people share their personal stories. Those personal stories should stay in this room. The lessons that we learn from them should be what we carry with us and be part of future conversations outside of this room. Keep it to the I. I just learned this one, speaking of I. Use I statements when sharing, if possible. Try to refrain as best you can from generalizing groups of any kind or assuming that your experience speaks for the experience of entire groups. Lead with loving intention. I like this one. When harmed, people are often encouraged to find the good intentions of the person who caused harm, thus putting the onus and work on the person experiencing the harm instead of asking the person who caused the harm to be mindful of their behavior. This is something that comes up in day-to-day conversations, but in these spaces, we ask that each individual take ownership of the way they show up and participate in the space, so as to show that words and actions align with an environment that fosters supportive learning and building. Lean in, lean in. This one is relatively new. If you're someone who tends to talk all of the time or are kind of renowned for it, they take time to make sure that you lean in to actively listen to people, especially if they don't get to talk as much. If you're someone who tends to stay out of the conversation, try to be open to lean into participating because we won't judge you. We're here and we value what you have to say. And finally, progressive stack. I always screw up explaining this, so bear with me. Outside in the world, every day, there is a hierarchy that exists where certain people have access and opportunity to be heard and believed on a broad public level. At the top of this hierarchy are cisgendered, heterosexual, wealthy white men. And at the bottom of the hierarchy are communities, Black women, women of color. We could add to the intersections and include transgender, differently abled, immigrant populations. Now, in the spaces that we hold up, we hope and aim to dismantle this hierarchy and flip it on its head. So part of that is acknowledging the hierarchy, and that doesn't mean that white men don't get to speak. It means that white men don't get to speak necessarily first. Now, it's the role of the facilitator to balance out not just progressive stack, but also the other working agreements that we just mentioned. So part of that is we're just working to create equity and unity in a working and learning space. Does that sound good? Does anyone have any questions so far? All right. Before I pass it off, just wanted to let that we're going to be. Hold on a sec. Am I still good? Okay. So I just wanted to mention that during this call, we are going to be holding breakout groups, and we'd appreciate if someone in the group could report back what they learned during the activity. Now, if you feel like you would like to be part of that, type #stack in the group chat, and we'll get you set up. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Shauna.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shayna Dowling. I'm from the Central New York region in Utica, and I am also a representative on the state board as well. I made a video about a month ago, kind of at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement protests around the country, and you know, it was right around Blackout Tuesday, and I wanted to do something and at the same time kind of draw attention to citizen action, because I think our organization does a great job really touching on the intersections of race and economics and pretty much everything. So if maybe Sam, can you pull up the video? It's
I'm gonna switch the screen. I'll share the video now.
sure. We are battling against the forces of capitalism and racism that show themselves through inequality and bigotry, and work together to oppress racism, patriarchy, and other systems of oppression.
It didn't work again?
There we go.
So you can
I
see
could
it.
see it. I could see it.
Of our lives through economics, education, housing, technological advancements, healthcare, the environment, and our criminal legal system. I became a member of Citizen Action of New York a few years ago because I could no longer remain idle in the face of growing adversity. And along the way, I've gotten to know a whole community of others who are actively working to achieve the dignified, just world we believe is possible. We know not everyone is able to knock on doors, meet with elected officials, etc., but you can still help by becoming a sustaining member. Whether it's $5 or $500, everything counts. Please visit citizenactionny.org for more information.
Okay, thank you. So then, thank you again, Shayna, for that video. I'm gonna reshare my screen onto the PowerPoint, and then we can just start back up. There we go.
So I don't know if anyone had a delay, but my video was a little bit choppy on this end. So I have it shared on the Central New York page, but I'm hoping maybe somebody else can share it on the main page. So if you'd like to pass that along or make your own, I actually just edited it on my phone through iMovie. But to get back to who we are, right? Citizen Action of New York is a statewide member-driven organization taking on the big issues that are at the center of transforming our communities. Issues that will achieve social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. Our power comes from the grassroots, meaning people coming together, like us now, to push to the edge of the possible. And we have 8 chapters throughout the state, pretty much reaching every corner from Buffalo, the Capital District in Albany, Central New York, which is us in Utica, Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island, Rochester, and the Southern Tier in Binghamton. And you know, we believe that, you know, all of these issues are extremely important and interconnected to each other. So there's a huge emphasis on education, working with our partners at the AQE Alliance for Equality Education, justice reform, housing, especially right now with kind of the pending eviction moratoriums coming up to the end, healthcare, fair elections, taxes and budget, climate change, and finally workers' rights. So again, some people have interests in one or two of these topics, but Citizen Action kind of covers the whole gamut. So I guess I will pass it off to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Hughes. I'm in the Rochester region, in the city of Rochester. My pronouns are she and her. I am going to talk just a little bit about racial capitalism as we understand it within Citizen Action, and would like to kind of draw all these things together under the understanding of the framework of racial capitalism. So we all know that race and class are driving forces behind inequality, but too often we think about how race and class influence our day-to-day experience exclusive of each other. The fact is that our day-to-day experience are influenced by race and class simultaneously, and it's important to see how these two systems of oppression, racism and capitalism, are interconnected. We're going to think about that in our breakout groups that are coming up, but we can probably, so all of these things that we just talked about that Citizen Action focuses on are all related to one another, interconnected within the framework of racial capitalism, and we want to change the narrative around that. Next slide, please. So leading with a racial justice lens is important because we're not going to achieve the long-term systemic change that we seek without explicitly addressing racism. And in this moment where so many folks are becoming more aware or ever more committed, as many of us have been in anti-racism work for a long time, we are seeing now a lot more folks coming online, and it's a great time for us to think about how we can reframe a lot of what has been thought of as individual experiences of good people or bad people, racist or non-racist, and really work towards an anti-racism framework. And this quote by AOC is pretty great. I can't name a single issue with roots in race that doesn't have economic implications, and I cannot think of a single economic issue that doesn't have racial implications. The idea that we have to separate them out and choose one is a con. It's really important for us not to get caught in the false dichotomy or the idea that these two things are separate things. They are interlocked in ways that make it impossible to separate them out. So, how we win. There is this understanding of an outside strategy and an inside strategy within Citizen Action and the work that's being done. So, the outside strategy really dealing with putting pressure on through the people, organizing and demonstrating, and promoting civic engagement at the grassroots level, and then also trying to influence policy with the inside strategy, political education, and campaigns that focus on legislative action. I think I'm explaining that fairly accurately. Am I missing anything, Sam? Thank you. So both working from the grassroots and getting the people engaged, and also dealing with the structures as they currently exist until we tear them down. Just a little bit of radical there, sorry. All right, so there's gonna be an opportunity, oh, 3 faces of power. I was like, where did that slide go? Okay. So this 3 faces of power figure is to help us visualize how the strategies of Citizen Action work together to bring us into a position to govern from the progressive, anti-racist and anti-capitalist mind or worldview that we share, and talking about winning elections and policy on the one side of the triangle, movement building, gaining that grassroots support, and engaging more people in the processes of placing pressure on power. And then changing the narrative is really kind of the core of all of it, because that gives us the big picture that gets into power to govern. And just on this figure of the triangle, thinking about pyramids and structures, we do want to kind of think about how all these things are interrelated, even though they look like separate things. These are all sides of the same whole, and we want to try to envision that as much as possible, have that in our minds as much as possible as we're talking about it. So we're not isolating these things as being separate or siloed, but they are all interconnected and have a influence on one another. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add how all of these things, like Sarah just said, have to happen all at the same time. So citizen action focus on winning elections, and that's why we phone bank and we move, but we build that base. So we have the phone bankers, and then we have political ed and the committee that these folks presenting are a part of, to change the narrative so the big picture can shift and we can ultimately win.
Excellent. Sorry. Thank you for that clarification. So as we go into the breakout groups, we're going to be looking at a couple of questions, and the three faces of power as illustrated in the last slide. What do those look like in your region and in your work? Which face are you comfortable with? Which area are you interested in learning more about? This is about getting engaged at a deeper level in the work of citizen action. So think about what it looks like for you in your region and what you're interested in getting more involved with. The breakouts, as I understand it, are going to be about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Sam's working on getting us all split up. So in a moment, you're going to be getting a prompt to go into a breakout session. And in that session, you're going to be focused on these questions. So if you need to note them, are they going to be, they're not going to be showing for us in the breakouts, are they?
I just put them in the chat, so everybody will be able to see them in the chat.
All right. They should, hopefully they won't go anywhere, but it's fairly simple. Hopefully. And then someone is going to want to take responsibility, as you talked about Stack earlier. We had a couple folks, I think, who indicated that with hashtag Stack that they'd be interested in doing the report back.
I think that's and just
figure it out
in the chat. Yep.
Okay. So once you're in your breakout group, you can determine that. Is there any other instruction that would be helpful? I'm not very experienced with facilitating breakouts and making sure they all get done, but but everybody in the group should have a chance to talk about these things, right?
Yep. Ground rules are great for working agreements. They're there for all spaces, so breakout groups too. And we will, yes, thank you, Michael. Building movement, grassroots and people, winning elections, and shaping the narrative. So building, to be cross, building shit, winning shit, and changing the story. So yeah, Ravi, if you could just split us up into the groups.
People should get a notification any second.
Beaming out, Scotty.
Yep, if you can't find the invite, it should say on the bottom toolbar of your Zoom screen, there's a little icon that says join breakout group. You should be able to click that and go right into the group that you were invited to. Nice. I think that there might have been Lily who just joined. If we could send them a invite. Lily, we're in a breakout group right now, if you did just join, answering a few questions, and then we're going to be coming back in a few minutes. Oh, okay. Should be getting your invite. So this one was about like a 10-minute breakout.
Hi, Martin. I see you just joined. We're just in breakout groups right now. So I am going to send you to a breakout group and having a conversation about what your organization looks like at your regional chapter level. And folks can kind of loop you into the conversation.
I'm already in a breakout room 5. I just logged on to my laptop because I was on my phone. So
Oh, got it. Okay, I'll put you in 5.
throw me in there. Thank you.
There are about 10 to 15 Sam Rainey's.
It's a really scary world to live in.
I made the mistake of private messaging you at one point, so it could have gone to anybody.
You private message me, I got it.
Hey, Daisy, were you in a specific room?
Yeah, I was in group 9 or breakout room number 9.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Excellent.
Should we tell people when they come back that they can rename themselves?
Yeah. Hmm. Mm.
For the report back, how do you want me to prompt that?
I think just seeing if, like, not everybody has to report back, but just saying if there really is somebody who'd like to share from their group, which face of power they were comfortable on, or which one you want to get to know more, that'd be fine. Or you can also prompt people to put it into the chat.
Sure.
Do we want to give it like 2 more minutes?
Yeah, I can give it a couple more minutes. And I think prompting people by the chat might be good.
Yeah. And one of the workshops I had last week, the teen one, it was great. Everybody just putting it right in there. And then we could just read it out loud.
And because it's more of like a choice-based answer, I feel like people aren't going to have many long form answers. So the chat might be best for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give folks a 2-minute warning.
Thank you. There you go. I'll be Sam reading.
Looks like we're right on time, which is great.
I thought we were going to be really late. I don't know why.
Welcome back to some of the folks who joined us. We're just going to give everybody like 30 seconds to break out of their breakout rooms. Looks like everybody is almost back. Welcome back. So because there are so many groups and so many people on the call, we want to use the chat function. If there's a face of power you identified as one that you're really comfortable with or you know a lot about, feel free to put it in the chat. Or if there are any aspects of that that you'd like to learn more about, or you think that it would be valuable for your chapter or your region, your organization to delve deeper into, feel free to, respond in the chat. And we'll just give it a minute to let folks respond before moving on to the next section. Rosemary saying the first face is so comfortable. Deeper understanding of shaping the narrative.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that narrative shift is something that we've been talking a lot about as an organization a lot more over the last year. Winning elections. Elections policy, changing the narrative, building movements. Sure. Winning elections, building movements. Narrative is huge for understanding the problem space, the appropriate solutions, and reaching the opposition. Now I'm kind of wishing we did a poll to see where all of these land. Elections coming in really fast, hard to read. I'm seeing a lot of narrative. I'm very excited. The folks were engaged with that question. These are great answers. So feel free to keep putting in your answers. I'm gonna pass it off now to Jacob Ramos, who's gonna take us through the next section.
Hello, hi there, Jacob Ramos. I'm in Albany, he, him, his pronouns. I am feeling medium high energy, comfortable, and I haven't been involved with Citizen Action very long. I moved here to work on a campaign in February, and then coronavirus happened, and I met enough people within the organization that I wanted to stay involved when I couldn't go back home. So. And luckily, like, I'm in New York when everything else is going. It's not going like perfectly. Obviously, it's never perfect, but it's definitely going better here than Florida. So yeah, so thank you all for having me and for welcoming me to be a part of that. So I am going to be talking about worldviews today. Worldview. So first one is going to be orient my chat. The 4 dominant worldview ideas. So you look around this triangular pyramid. You have the free market solves all problems, a rising tide lifts all boats idea. You have white male supremacy, which is racism, sexism, xenophobia, anti-government, government is efficient, wasteful, and doesn't work, and then individualism, people are responsible for themselves. So like the slide that we saw earlier with the first triangle, this all fits in together to kind of outline the idea that makes our current situation with our policies and with the people that we have in office possible. So it's really important that as an organization, as a people, we can call out and know when these themes are coming up in anyone's works. We know to give them our full support or to not give them our full support. So with individualism, if we look at masks in communities, people don't assume that, people look at themselves and they say, well, I'm not going to get sick. What does it matter? And then they want to, when the real case is like you're going to get an older person sick. So there's no collective thought around that. Anti-government would be that billionaire philanthropy and small government should not be what we rely on, that we need a large government initiative that addresses the needs of everyone. If we look at, the free market, I'm losing my place, so I apologize. So we need a large government initiative that addresses the needs of everyone is actually the case. We have not seen the federal government take action that we need to fight this pandemic, and that's because all these ideas reinforce and allow for someone who is racist, who thinks that the free market solves all the problems, and is anti-government because he ran his election on saying that our leadership was stupid, that it wouldn't work, and then also obviously individualistic because a lot of the states that are reopening right now are saying that people need to practice responsibility, that they have a responsibility for their economy and for their own safety of their families, which is like, you just need to be a leader and tell people what they need to do. Or convince them rather. But then if you want to go on to the next slide. Awesome, thank you. So for transformative ideas, we're gonna have a breakout room where people are going to be asked to create transformative narratives based off these. So the fix to these and what we want to reinforce with all of our messaging is that the economy is for the common good, that there's an everyone in and no one out reparations mentality. It is a government for the people mentality, and it is Antone, and it is a community/interdependence. So when we talk about, for instance, community interdependence, the idea that taxes are a burden for working class families that are trying to get by and inhibit businesses' ability to provide jobs. The transformative message is that it's morally reprehensible that that billionaires do not pay what they owe us in taxes to fund public goods that establish a foundation for basic human rights in the richest country on earth. So it's important that we, like, it is morally reprehensible, and then also it establishes like the grounds that it's not about a business's ability to provide jobs. It's not about that these are nice things to give people. It's that they're basic human rights, and you're defining it in your terms. So that, like, we own where the foundation of the argument is. Then version of dominant narrative would be that communities don't receive the attention they deserve when residents don't get the time to get involved, or don't take the time to get involved rather. So that kind of sets up the idea that like people have a surplus amount of time where they could get involved when it's not necessarily their responsibility to be educated, when we all should recognize that functional governments, functional democracies are inherent on people being educated. So the government should take an interest in educating people. And then the last one, going along to get along politics, has led to divestment in our communities, underfunded public education systems, and a long list of unaddressed problems. The transformative version of this could be, go along to get along politics has created a dynamic that has obscured accountability with politicians that don't look like the populations they represent, leading to diminished public oversight over elected officials that is necessary for addressing the needs of the many. So what that could look like is, you know, people are asked what they need and what they want. There's consensus made between the community, and then the elected official goes and brings that forward and represents them and their needs. So with that, we are going to go, I think, into breakout. Is that appropriate? Does that cover?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Jacob. So we're going to go into a breakout room now, again, and we're going to talk about how we see these narratives, how they're showing up right now in terms of, you know, the pandemic, the movement for Black Lives, everything we're seeing being reported out, because the dominant worldview, like we said in the chat, is kind of what our opponents, Republican or Democrat, you know, establishment electeds will use in order to tell their story in their lens. We have to combat that, and we combat that with this transformative idea that Jacob just went over so well. So I just want to kind of see where people are at in terms of like story sharing. What are you hearing right now, and what are you not? And sharing that in your breakout rooms. So these will be the questions. We'll prompt them again. What stories, comments, headlines have you heard that depict the dominant narrative? And then what stories, comments, headlines have you heard that depict a transformative narrative? So have you heard anything that's good? It might be difficult to, and also like what representatives, what electeds, what people in your area are talking in transformative way, or are they talking in the dominant way?
And we'll also put them in chat. And I think, you know, connecting it to this moment we're in COVID with Black Lives Matter and the uprisings against police violence, we're seeing a lot of very polarized narratives. Some that are promoting really dominant and regressive ideas, and some that are promoting transformational ideas. So yeah, where are we seeing those, and how are they kind of manifesting in this moment? And you should get an invite to join a room in a second. So give folks till about 7:30.
Yeah. I feel like it's so quick of a worldview discussion, but it's so needed, even if it is a small, brief one.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad we didn't do like construct your transformational narrative. I think it would have been too much of a lift.
Yes. I think we should, at the end, while you're closing, Robbie, maybe give a good shout out to the volunteers who facilitated today.
For sure. Do I have everyone? Jacob, Shayna, Fred, oh, Sarah.
Sarah.
I really want to eat dinner.
What are you going to eat?
I'm going to make pad thai.
Ooh. Wow. How do you make a sauce for pad thai?
Like, what is it? Oyster sauce, fish sauce, brown sugar, rice wine vinegar. I don't know. There are a handful of things.
Nice. I don't know. I always have like a fusion of stuff that I put together for meals like that, but never anything that I'm actually supposed to use, I think. Like I have rice vinegar or, whatever I kind of have, I'll put together.
Totally. I've gotten, really into like using Thai sauces for like everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that should have been the question. What's your favorite cuisine?
Then everybody would just be hungry and upset they were here.
Hey, Tanya. We are just in breakout rooms right now, so I'm going to send you into a breakout room, and they will loop you into the discussion. It says Q&A. Is there a Q&A slide?
No, I think maybe it was a thought around like if anybody had any questions, but I think that we don't really need that.
Yeah, that could be a long thing.
I know. That's me just being like, we have all the time in the world.
Give folks a 2-minute warning.
Perfect. Come here. Come here. Oh. Maybe we can also highlight like that worldview will be kind of talked about throughout the week or something like that. Or like this week will exemplify our worldview.
Yeah, this week will exemplify our worldview, and also maybe challenging people to pay attention to worldview as you're watching the news, as you're engaging on social media, and whether something is supporting a dominant or a transformational worldview. And then the links you're going to put in the link for the rest of the events this week.
Mm-hmm. And our political ed group, right?
Yeah, in the political ed group. Gave everyone 52 seconds.
Perfect. That means I have 52 seconds to change my screen.
No, I haven't closed the rooms yet. I'm just giving people weird numbers. Like 2.5 minutes and it's 52 seconds. I think it keeps things interesting.
What am I doing?
Welcome back to folks. We're just gonna wait 20 seconds and then all the rooms are gonna close up. Wow, welcome back everyone. I hope folks got a chance to share and it didn't move too fast. Feel free as well to use the chat to share some examples that you thought of, and then I'll also take some, if you can raise your hand using the raise your hand function, or put your name in the chat to go on stack. Just taking a couple of answers of an example of either a dominant or a transformational narrative that you've seen recently. Branwyn, then Jessica.
I've seen the dominant narrative, especially in our two newspapers in this area, that they're far on the conservative side, and it's been mostly from national news, and it's usually trying to put Trump in a positive light or something along those lines. But also transformative narrative. We had here in Rome, New York, we had a Black Lives Matter march, but 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and that made local news headlines because the police and the police chief were actually in the march. I think they know which way the wind's blowing, and they actually knelt with us on knee, and so there was a really good picture in the newspapers of that.
Thanks so much. And I saw the arm. I'm like, is that a cat arm reaching out? Jessica, then Felicia.
One thing we talked a lot about Black Lives Matter, but another thought I had about here in Rochester is that for a long time now, we've had in our school district a funding crisis. And regionally, most people believe that there has been some money stolen, that, you know, we've got this, I mean, not that there aren't issues, but that it's this whole hugely corrupt board that is, you know, like giving out all this money, and in reality, New York State owes us over $85 million in foundation aid, which is never part of the conversation. Anytime there's a story run on any major news outlet, you'll never hear the mayor mention the funding crisis. You'll never hear almost any of our legislators talk about foundation aid and how that's owed to us, and what a crucial part of the problem that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that firsthand from living in Rochester. Felicia?
Yeah, I actually wanted to share. So one of the members in our group who spoke last, we really didn't get a chance to respond to it, but I thought it was like, it really sparked something that I thought a lot of people feel, is that the dominant narrative that like we can't defund the police because of safety, but we're starting to see more of the transformative part of the narrative flip the script and say, well, why don't we have these discussions about safety when we defund hospitals, when we defund healthcare, when we defund education? Like that part, that I think is a transformative narrative. And I know in my experience, when I've talked to people who do have those fears about, well, you know, the defunding the police, how could we possibly do that? And you bring that up and you have them see it in a new light. Like, why is it, you ask the question, but why is it that we haven't, you know, raised this question whenever we're defunding education and we're defunding healthcare? Is it really about safety that we can't defund the police? So I just want to give props to Ryan for that, because I wish we had more time to talk about it, because I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, that's really great and super interesting. And I like those posts where it's like, what does it look like to defund the police? Well, we've been defunding education for decades. And nobody has cried out about it, and we need a giant shift of priorities. Anton?
Yes, we talked a little bit about I spoke about the living, you know, sort of developing us versus them narrative that we hear from the police unions, and that is the wrong narrative that's really going away from what actually is being proposed. So we heard a little bit about the New York City proposal in our in our room, and what it actually does versus what's being presented as it's doing. And again, I spoke about community policing a little bit, and question, and even in on the progressive, in our progressive question was, what is community policing? I didn't quite expect that question, but I think we need to talk more about how we are one community, and we need to change that narrative on not us versus them, but we all want to be one better community, and that's one of the things that we need change. But it's not about individual police officers. It's about changing the structure that is going to work for the entire community.
Thank you so much, Anton. And that's exactly right. That me versus us narrative is so deeply rooted in individualism. And we see it manifest in so many different ways. And then when we talk about good cop versus bad cop, the problem is a system. It's a problem of a system and structure that's rooted in white supremacy and racism. And it's so important to talk about it in terms of structure rather than individual people. So we're just going to give a quick wrap up now, talking about our victories and what's to come this week. So citizen action over the past several years, and far earlier than that, has been able to win a number of things using both that inside-outside strategy, mobilizing people at a grassroots level to push for big change. Last year, we passed new rent laws that provided tenant protections that had led to, I think, 20-30% drop in evictions. Now we are seeing we're at serious risk of a mass eviction crisis because of the pandemic, and we want to see a cancellation of rent and new protections put in place to keep people in their homes. But last year, we were able to pass a number of key bills, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour downstate, $12.50 upstate, passing paid sick day legislation, which was recently passed, guaranteeing that people have paid sick days rather than having to go to work sick. We have, a number of other things that we've won include paid family leave. Recently, the 50A bill which guarantees a certain level of police accountability and transparency that didn't exist before. Bail and discovery reforms, key climate legislation, voting rights, and campaign public financing laws, that we've been involved with those fights over the years. And then election wins. So in various like flip districts, swing districts, we've played a huge role with Antonio Delgado winning for Congress, Anthony Brindisi flipping the IDC, which were, if people don't know, rogue Democrats who actually caucused with the Republicans, and knocking them out of office and winning a Democratic Senate majority. So most of these victories were able to finally pass. We've helped people like Jamani Williams become public advocate in New York City. In Rochester recently, we just won a huge number of races over Democratic designated candidates, and protected a bunch of our champions in the legislature like Yulee New and Diana Richardson in recent elections. So we've had a bunch of success on the electoral front as well. So this was the first day of our leadership summit, and we really encourage folks to come back. We have 3 upcoming events. Tomorrow, we're doing What's Cooking, as Yvette mentioned earlier on. That is our monthly cooking show where Rosemary and Charlie, our directors, cook with a special guest. And that special guest is going to be Pablo Tapia, who has been deeply involved in civil rights struggles and immigrant rights struggles in Minnesota and Minneapolis. So he's also going to be talking about what's been going on in the ground in the Twin Cities. And the food they're going to be cooking is salsa. It's a special salsa themed episode. And we do the What's Cooking in a way that you don't have to actively be sitting in your study on your computer. We encourage you to cook with us, put your computer on, hang out, grab a glass of wine, cook. And it's like, it's like a conversation with your friends. And on Thursday, we're going to be having a panel discussion about electoral power and how Citizen Action and the Working Families Party build together to win big electoral victories. And that panel is going to include Sochi Namaka, the state director for Working Families Party, Karen Scharf, our former executive director, and also one of the key founders of the Working Families Party, Samra Brook, who's a candidate in the 55th State Senate District and a Working Families champion, and Alexandria Biaggi, who was defeated the head of the IDC, Jeff Klein, and is a great progressive champion in the legislature. So I really encourage folks to come to that panel on Thursday. And then on Saturday is our big main event, which is 2 hours. And the keynote speaker is Dr. Tony Lewis. And we're going to be doing our elections at that time. And I really encourage folks to come for that big Saturday event. So I just want to give a special thanks to our volunteers who helped facilitate today. Jacob, Shayna, Fred, Sarah, Yvette. Thank you so much for volunteering and participating, and you all did a fantastic job. If folks want to get involved with political education, the Political Education Committee, Sam and I have regular meetings, work groups where we work on curriculums, lead trainings, and I think Sam will be putting in a link to get connected with that in the chat. And next week, we're also going to be doing a training on dog whistle politics and the history of using coded racism within politics to shift the agenda. And you can look for that next Monday, but we really want to prioritize the Leadership Summit events coming up this upcoming week. So thank you folks for participating. Hope to see you at an upcoming event. And yeah, feel free to stay connected. Reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns, comments, and have a great rest of the night.